So I'm just going to show you how you can set up multiple LFO tools all being triggered by kind of one MIDI clip. What you're going to do is we're going to create a new MIDI track, so Shift Command T, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to copy the MIDI I have from this drum rack here. I'm going to just zoom in down here at the bottom. This is the kick drum MIDI that I have. So now we have the MIDI set up. This is what we're going to use to trigger the sidechain compression. It's not technically sidechain compression, it's more like triggered volume envelopes. And let's just rename this really quick, trigger. And what I'm going to put on trigger here is a external instrument. There we go. And what I'm going to do is group this. Okay, so that's how we set this up. Now here's a couple instruments down here, drum rack, some vocals, but here's a pluck, a piano, some chords, and a sub. And so just for fun, I'm going to show you that you can use this trigger, this MIDI right here, to trigger the volume envelopes for the sidechain compression on the piano and the chords. So let's start with the piano. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come and find the LFO tool. Let's just drag it in here. We have the LFO tool now on the piano channel. And what I'm going to do is hit Note Retrig. Okay. And I'm going to click it one more time so it triggers an envelope. And maybe I'll get back to that, but make sure it's on envelope. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is going to come back over to the trigger and we're going to select this guy, this external instrument. We're going to rename him piano. Okay, it's not necessary that you rename it, but it's going to make your life a lot easier. And so we're going to come over here to MIDI 2, and we're going to send this to the piano, and you'll see that it's going to the N1, but we want this MIDI to be sent to the LFO tool. And so now this MIDI information is being sent through this external instrument to the LFO tool on the piano. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to solo the piano. Just going to solo the kick. Okay. Now what you can do is just dial this in the way that you want it. And I'm going to throw this tip in here. This is something that I love doing. I love turning the grid value all the way up. As you can see, obviously you have a much finer grid value. And so I'm going to bring this all the way down. And if you hold down Option or Alt on the Mac, probably the same on the PC, these little LFO nodes lock to the grid value. And so I like doing that because then I feel like I could be very precise because I could really truly A/B different movements in here. All right, and now let's come back over to the trigger. Now, as I said, we have the LFO tool now on the piano. And then what we could also do is just duplicate this guy, Command D, and we're going to call this chords. All right, and so we're going to come over to the chords, and we're going to drag the LFO tool onto here. Again, we're going to turn this on to envelope mode, and I guess I'll go over what this is. If you don't have it on envelope mode, then it might re-trigger based on the rate. So if you have this on a faster rate, like on a 16th or something, and let's say that there is a bigger gap than a 16th between these kicks, the LFO tool will re-trigger based on the rate. And so you want to trigger it on envelope because that just means anytime there's a MIDI, it's just going to trigger it once. And so you don't have to worry about the LFO tool re-triggering based on the rate here. And so I'm just going to change this back to fourth. There we go. Let's turn off the dot and the triple. Shift tab to come back over here. Come over to the chords. We're going to be sending this MIDI information to chords, and it's going to find it directly on the LFO tool. And so let's turn on the chords now, turn off the piano, and let's see if this worked. And there we go. We see that we can have also the piano LFO tool open. We can have different envelopes shaping the volume of the different instruments, the piano and the chords, using the same MIDI trigger clip. Another way that you could do this is instead to just create like a group. So let's just take the chords and the piano, for example, and group these guys, group the tracks. And then what you could do is just put the LFO tool on this group, and then come over to here. Let's just get rid of these guys, and whoops. And then what we'll do is let's just get rid of this thing. We don't need to group the external instrument anymore. We could just send this to 12 group, and let's just rename this to sidechain group. And so this might actually be like something I might do later on in like mixing, where I have just like a sidechain group where I want to slightly sidechain everything as a unit. But for now, I'm just showing you quickly how to you could just set up the group, apply the LFO tool to the whole group, and then you just have one LFO triggering the volume automation on all of the group elements. Now obviously you don't have as much control because you have one volume envelope adjusting the volume of all the group elements. And the previous way that I mentioned, you can have individual control over the envelopes of each individual track. And so my preferred way is obviously the first way that I showed you. So that's it. Have a great day.